Hello, it's Wednesday morning, the 8th of April, and it's kind of hard to keep track of the days because everything is so strange right now, isn't it? And as you can see, I'm here in the church, and I'm doing some work on the church in the schoolroom through there, and had a good clean up, got the cobwebs away from the ceiling, so Gwen will be pleased about that, and the ceiling's been painted. So today I'm going to get on with the walls. Also done a little bit of work outside on, let me just show you that window up there. I call it the Solomon window because it's got that glass of, reminds me of a seal of Solomon anyway. So that's been painted on the outside, and one of the good things of this moment is being able to come into the church and do some of these things and know that there's no groups being able to come in at the moment. But obviously in the long term, we want to see the groups return back here. And most vital of all, we want to see ourselves being able to gather again as the Lord's people, because it's great that we can use communications of the phone, emails, videos, whatever, but you cannot beat gathering together as the saints of God, and that warmth of fellowship and seeing how people are getting on and being able to pray with one another, sing hymns and psalms, encourage and build one another up. And I'm sure we're all really missing that at the moment, aren't we? And so let's look forward to being able to gather here together again soon, and hopefully it won't be long before this lockdown ends and some kind of normality can be restored to us, because it's just so right that God's people should gather together and to be able to enjoy fellowship, break the communion bread and drink the wine, and just enjoy that wonderful presence of the Lord that is unique to being gathered together as his people. So we look forward to that, and let's keep praying and hope that these days, that we're not wasting these days, but we're looking forward to being restored together in fellowship. I've noticed that a lot of pastors and elders and leaders of churches have been forced onto the internet, forced to do videos like this, and I noticed somebody made a funny comment somewhere. He said that some of these videos, they look like video ransom notes, that these poor guys are being held hostage. There's just a background of them against the wall, and they look very uncomfortable talking to camera. And it is a strange thing. It really is strange. It's sometimes it's hard enough preaching to people in a small room or in a large crowd, whatever, but it's really quite difficult when there's nobody else here and you're just looking into this lens, and that's quite an odd thing to get used to. But none of us want to get used to that. We want to have this lockdown ended and to be able to gather together again, and hopefully that will not be long. And that's what we're praying for, isn't it? That none of us saw this coming, but let's hope and see the end of the matter and being able to gather together again as God's people. Up and down this nation, I'm sure many people are really missing what we perhaps took for granted. I remember maybe about a year ago talking about the persecuted church and how there are places today, like in North Korea, where people have to whisper when they gather together because they're in such danger that they'll be carted off to prison, maybe never heard of again, maybe dying in those places. And I kind of said, we take these things for granted, but we mustn't think that it may never happen here. But I never imagined that this would happen, and that we wouldn't be able to gather together, not because of persecution, but because of a nationwide lockdown. And it really brings home to me And I'm sure to you, how important it is to be able to gather together, to meet together as God's people. And, you know, perhaps ultimately we have just taken it for granted for too long, and it's freedom for the temporarily has been taken away from us. But may it just really impact upon us that it is a precious thing to be able to gather together as God's people in places like this, up and down the nation, and may it not be long before it's restored to us again. And thank God that it hasn't been because of a persecution, but it has been that everybody, you know, cinemas, shops that are not vital have been shut. People can't just go out unless they've got a reason. So let's hope that this passes, because at best it's an inconvenience, and at worst a lot of people are suffering, and it's a really, really difficult time for people. And one of the things that's been striking to me is that these people who unfortunately really suffer the worst effects of the virus are going into hospital, and they can't have their family and their loved ones and their friends visit them. And worse, they're dying there sometimes, sadly, as we're hearing these figures, these daily figures of people who unfortunately couldn't survive the virus. Even in my own family, my uncle this last weekend, unfortunately he died, and my mother was really upset that she couldn't be there for him in his last hours. So that has been played out across the nations, even that awful situation, and it's just so tragic, isn't it? It really is. But anyway, I'm just going to share a little thing from Psalm 46, which I've noticed a lot of people have been referencing in these days. And of course, the Word of God is always apt in all situations. But certainly Psalm 46 has been especially poignant at this difficult time. So Psalm 46, and I'm going to read, it's only a short psalm, I'll read the whole chapter. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of her, she shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations rage, the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice, the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us, the God of Jacob is our fortress. Come and behold the works of the Lord, how he has brought desolations on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the chariots with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. And it says there, right at the beginning in verse 1, a very present help in trouble, our refuge and our strength. And God is with us. God is with his people. And we didn't see this coming, but he knows the beginning from the end. He's the Alpha and Omega. God is not taken by surprise by this. The nations are in turmoil. Things may actually get worse, but we must look to God. We must look to our refuge, and he's with us in trouble. He's with us when we're facing an uncertain economic future. He's with us when our families are in harm's way and we can't be there and we can't comfort them. He's with us. He's our refuge, an ever-present help in trouble. And it's important that we don't get so distracted with all the fear and the uncertainty of these days, but come back to our God, to our simple childlike trust in his fatherly care. Our God rules over all things. Our God reigns. Our God is the God that causes wars to cease. Our God is a God who roots up nations and plants nations. Nothing is too hard for him, Jeremiah the prophet said. Nothing is too hard for our God. And it may seem sometimes that this lockdown, there's no end to it, but God can end it in his time. It's important for us to be patient, to keep looking to him, to keep our eyes upon Jesus. And don't waste these days. Don't waste our time being distracted with all the bad news, with all the conspiracy theories that are out there. Focus our attention on the Lord. He tells us what we need to know. There's so many people out there who want to say this is going to happen, that's going to happen, this is the fulfillment of this is the fulfillment of that. It's important just to still our hearts and trust in God, that God will be exalted in all this, and that we must look to exalt him by expressing our trust as his children under his fatherly care. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. He is with us in this, in these days of uncertainty, in these days when perhaps some of us are just feeling like, I cannot cope with this any longer, this is too much. Let's find that grace that he offers, that peace that passes understanding to guard our hearts and our minds in Christ Jesus. And let's just continue to have that hope that soon we'll be restored in fellowship, being able to gather together and to encourage one another. And it's important just to know that even though we're not able to see one another, in our hearts we are remembering one another in prayer. We're not separated when we come together in prayer, when we can all be praying every day one for another, as we take note of what's going on, of what difficulties have arisen. We're able to communicate still, aren't we? It's a wonderful thing. But we're able also to uphold one another to the Lord in prayer, and to just to continue to show that care to God as his people, having that care and concern for his body. Even around the world, our brothers and sisters are suffering, are under pressure, and yet just continue looking to God, who in all things is working for our good. And we may not see it. We certainly didn't see these days coming upon us, this lockdown. But again, we can trust in his fatherly care. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Let's hope it's not too long before we're able to gather together and just enjoy fellowship one with another in the presence of our God. Amen. The Lord bless you. Thank you for listening, and say we'll continue to pray, seek the Lord in these days, make the most of this time that we have, build ourselves up, be in the Word, read books about the Word, be in prayer, and keep that thankful and glad heart that typify a Christian hope. We have a hope the world doesn't have. We have an anchor, don't we? So let's keep our joy and our trust in our loving Father who cares for us. Amen.